Dubai, November 2024. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sheila Bautista's 16th floor office in Dubai Marina, casting long golden rectangles across the Italian marble floor. Outside, the skyscrapers glittered like man-made mountains in the desert sun, a view she'd carefully cultivated to impress clients when they sat in the hand-stitched leather chairs across from her desk. At 42, Sheila had built a reputation as the architect of perfect days for Dubai's elite, a Filipino immigrant who'd transformed herself into the gatekeeper of society's most significant moments. Every morning followed the same ritual. Sheila arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, checked her immaculately arranged desk, the Mont Blanc pens aligned at precise angles, the fresh-cut orchids in a crystal vase, the leather portfolio containing today's appointments, while the distant muezzin's call to prayer floated through the sealed windows. She wore a tailored navy pantsuit, Louboutin heels, and pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother in Quezon City. The pearls were her only concession to sentimentality. "Yes, Mama, the money should arrive by Friday," Sheila said in Tagalog, phone pressed between ear and shoulder as she reviewed contracts. "Tell Kuya Miguel his daughter's university fees are covered for next term." She listened, eyes fixed on the Dubai horizon. "Business is excellent, Mama. Don't worry about me." The lie came easily after 15 years. Her journey from Manila hotel management graduate to Dubai's elite wedding planner had been meticulously constructed, each step calculated. What wasn't in her carefully curated Instagram feed or glowing client testimonials was the weight she carried: financial obligations to family back home, the crushing loneliness of maintaining appearances, and the void left by her husband Roberto's death 5 years earlier. Sheila ended the call and straightened her already straight jacket. Her 10 a.m. appointment would arrive in exactly 12 minutes. The Emirates Tower's lobby echoed with soft classical music as Sheikh Talal Al-Murka entered, flanked by 2 assistants who maintained a respectful 3 steps behind him. At 33, Talal carried himself with the studied dignity of a man constantly aware of his position. Unlike the flashier ruling families, the Al-Murkas were merchant dynasty who'd gained significant influence during the oil boom of the 1990s, new money by Gulf standards but careful to present an image of conservative respectability. "Ms. Bautista," he said, extending a hand with calculated warmth. His English carried the polished accent of a Swiss boarding school education. "Thank you for accommodating my schedule." Sheila bowed slightly, the deference of her Filipino upbringing melding with professional courtesy. "The pleasure is mine, Your Excellency." They settled in a private meeting room where Sheila had already arranged portfolios of her previous royal weddings. What she recognized immediately in Talal's eyes was the familiar tension she'd seen in many of Dubai's elite men, the conflict between personal desires and family expectations. Behind his meticulously groomed beard and bespoke suit was a man shouldering the weight of an entire family's reputation. "My mother speaks highly of your discretion," he said, examining one of the portfolios without actually seeing it. "This matter requires the utmost confidentiality." "Of course," Sheila replied. "May I ask about your fiancé? It helps to understand the couple's story when designing the perfect day." Something flickered across Talal's face. Pride, possession, perhaps even genuine affection. "Nina is exceptional. A Filipina, actually, though I'm sure you've already researched that detail." Sheila allowed a small, knowing smile. "I make it my business to be prepared, Your Excellency." What remained unspoken was how the Al-Murka family, particularly Talal's mother Maryam and father Khalid, had initially resisted the match. A foreign bride was acceptable for a man of Talal's position, but they had preferred someone from another prominent Gulf family. That Talal had insisted on Nina spoke either of genuine love or, more likely to Sheila's experienced eye, a rare assertion of control from a man who typically yielded to family pressure. The Dubai Mall glittered with artificial light as Nina Alvarado posed against a backdrop of the indoor waterfall, the photographer from Vogue Arabia directing her with rapid-fire instructions. At 26, Nina moved with the liquid grace that had carried her from provincial obscurity in Iloilo City to international modeling contracts. Her features, high cheekbones, almond eyes, full lips, photographed like a dream, exotic enough to stand out in the Middle Eastern fashion scene, but with a softness that made her approachable. "Perfect, Habibi, now look down." "Shy bride, yes?" called the photographer. Between shots, Nina checked her phone, quickly typing a message. The recipient was Kuya Carlo Hartsuit, her older brother back in the Philippines. "School fees paid for Mark and Leah. We'll send extra next week for Lola's medicine. Love you." She locked the screen before anyone could see, the mask of professional serenity returning instantly. What the camera never captured was the mathematical calculations constantly running behind her eyes. How much sent home each month? How much saved for emergencies? How much needed to maintain the appearance expected of Sheikh Talal Almerka's fiancé? That afternoon, Nina sat across from Maryam Almerka in the older woman's private sitting room, back straight, ankles crossed, accepting tea with practiced grace. "You look lovely in emerald," Maryam observed, eyes assessing every detail of Nina's carefully selected Dior dress. "Talal mentioned you've chosen Sheila Bautista for the wedding planning." "Yes, her work is exceptional," Nina replied, "and I thought perhaps having a Filipino planner might help incorporate some elements of my heritage." What Nina didn't say was how desperately she needed an ally who might understand her background, someone who wouldn't look at her as an exotic acquisition. Maryam's smile remained fixed, neither approving nor disapproving, merely evaluating. Nina had learned that in this world, she was always being evaluated. The lock clicked shut on Sheila's apartment door at 11:47 p.m. Only then did her shoulders drop, the perfect posture of Dubai's premier wedding planner giving way to exhaustion. She kicked off her Louboutins, leaving them where they fell, and moved to her bedroom where a hidden panel in the closet concealed a safe. Inside was a laptop she never connected to her home Wi-Fi. Using a VPN and an anonymous browser, Sheila logged into offshore gambling sites catering to the expatriate community. The screens glowed with numbers in red: 320,000 AED, $87,000, spread across 3 different accounts, all due within 2 months. It had started 3 years after Roberto's death. A colleague's birthday celebration at a private club, a casual bet on a horse race that had given her the first rush of excitement she'd felt since becoming a widow, then bigger bets to recapture that feeling, then desperate bets to recover losses. A classic spiral she'd seen destroy other expatriates but never imagined would capture her. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unlisted number. "Payment schedule not optional. Meeting tomorrow to discuss terms." Sheila's hands trembled as she closed the laptop. She took 3 deep breaths, went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection. Within 3 minutes, her expression had reset to the composed professional Dubai society knew. Compartmentalization was her superpower, separating the flawless wedding planner from the desperate gambler drowning in debt. The Jumeirah Beach Hotel's presidential suite had been transformed into a meeting space worthy of the occasion. Sheila had arranged everything with mathematical precision: the flower arrangements, peonies and orchids, Maryam's favorites, the refreshments, traditional Arabic coffee and French pastries, the lighting, bright enough to examine documents, soft enough to flatter aging skin. Maryam Almerka entered like royalty, trailing 2 assistants and a personal secretary. At 58, she moved with the confidence of a woman who had navigated the transition from traditional merchant's wife to modern matriarch of an influential family. "Sheila Habibi," she said, air-kissing both cheeks, "show me how you'll make my son's wedding the event of the decade." Sheila opened her presentation with practiced charm. "I understand you've approved a preliminary budget of 22 million AED, which will allow us to create something truly unprecedented." The unspoken message was clear. This wedding wasn't just a marriage but a statement of the Almerka family's position in Dubai society. Every detail would be scrutinized by their peers, every element judged. The guest list stands at 800, including the Minister of Finance and 3 minor royals from neighboring Emirates. Sheila continued, presenting a leather-bound portfolio she called her perfect day blueprint. Maryam nodded approvingly at the proposed security measures and vetting procedures for staff. "Discretion is paramount," she emphasized. "My son's position requires absolute privacy. All vendors must sign enhanced confidentiality agreements." What remained unspoken was the true purpose of such measures: protecting not just privacy but control over the narrative. In Dubai's high society, perception was currency, and the Almerka family traded in it expertly. Of course, Sheila assured her. I personally supervise every individual involved in my events. For months to execute the most talked about wedding of the year. For months that would either save Sheila from financial ruin or destroy everything she'd built. As Miriam reviewed the contracts, Sheila calculated her standard commission against her debts and felt the familiar knot of panic. It wouldn't be enough. Not nearly enough. But there would be opportunities in a wedding of this magnitude. There always were. Dubai, December 2024. The presidential suite of the Burj Al Arab had been transformed into a private bridal salon that resembled a scene from a fairy tale. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Arabian Gulf stretching to the horizon, its waters shifting from turquoise to deep blue. Inside, racks of couture wedding gowns worth millions of dirhams stood like elegant sentinels, each one a masterpiece of handcrafted lace, silk, and crystal. Sheila supervised as 3 assistants arranged the gowns in order of preference, their hands protected by white cotton gloves. She checked her watch, platinum Cartier, a gift from a Russian oligarch's daughter whose wedding had featured live swans and an imported Siberian choir. The appointment was scheduled for exactly 2 p.m. It was now 1:47. The photographer will remain in the corner, she instructed a nervous young Filipina assistant. No flash until I approve. The Sheikh's mother requested specific angles for the family album. What Sheila didn't mention was how Miriam Almerka had specified that Nina should appear appropriately modest in all documentation of the process. The unspoken directive was clear. The foreign bride must project the values of her new family, not her own. At precisely 2 p.m., Nina arrived with a single companion, her modeling agent, a brisk British woman who immediately began examining the contract terms for the exclusive photos that would be released to Vogue Arabia. Nina herself seemed almost ethereal in a simple white sheath dress, her dark hair swept into a low bun, her only jewelry a jade bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother. Sheila, she greeted with genuine warmth, embracing the older woman. This is overwhelming. The first fitting always is, Sheila replied, her professional mask softening slightly. Something about Nina's unaffected gratitude touched a part of her that had grown calloused after years in Dubai's transactional social environment. For the next 2 hours, Nina transformed from gown to gown, each one more elaborate than the last. Cameras clicked softly as she moved with professional grace, but Sheila noticed the trembling in her hands, the forced quality of her smile. When a designer himself fussed over the placement of a veil, Nina's eyes met Sheila's in the mirror, a silent plea for help that triggered Sheila's protective instincts despite her better judgment. Let's break for lunch, Sheila announced when Nina had tried on the 7th gown. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. As the room emptied, designers stepping out for cigarettes, assistants rushing to collect lunch orders, the photographer downloading images. Nina remained on the pedestal, still wearing a cathedral-length gown with a 3-meter train. Once they were alone, her composure cracked. I can't breathe in this, she whispered, tears suddenly welling. I can't breathe in any of this. Sheila rushed forward, helping her down from the pedestal, unfastening the dozens of pearl buttons that ran down her spine. Sit, she said gently, guiding Nina to a plush sofa. What's really wrong? Nina's fingers clutched at the jade bracelet, twisting it around her wrist, a nervous habit Sheila had noticed throughout the fitting. I've made a terrible mistake, she said, her voice barely audible. Not Talal. I love him, but there's something in my past. The confession spilled out in broken sentences. 3 years ago, after her father's sudden death had left the family with crushing medical debts, Nina had created an OnlyFans account. Nothing explicit by Western standards, lingerie photos, suggestive videos, but enough to generate the income needed to keep her younger siblings in school and her grandmother in kidney treatment. I deleted everything when my modeling career began, she explained, tears tracking silent paths down her carefully made-up face. But I'm terrified something might resurface. If Talal's family found out, if it got back to the conservative clients he works with, the unspoken reality hung between them. In the UAE, where modesty laws were strictly enforced and honor remained paramount in elite circles, such a discovery would be catastrophic. Not just for the wedding, but potentially for Nina's safety. Sheila's mind raced with dual calculations: professional concern for a bride in distress and the sudden, shameful recognition of opportunity. She thought of the threatening text message she'd received that morning. Final warning: payment plan or consequences. "Let me think," Sheila said, her voice steady as she handed Nina a tissue. "There are specialists who can help with digital footprints." That night, Sheila sat at her kitchen table, calculator in hand, bourbon in a crystal tumbler, her single indulgence when alone. The numbers were unforgiving. Her standard commission on the Al Merka wedding, 210,000 AED. Her gambling debt, 320,000 AED, with compounding interest. The shortfall would only grow. Her phone buzzed. A text from a Filipino number she recognized instantly. "Tomorrow, Café Betrayal, 9 p.m. Bring 50,000 or collateral." The collateral they wanted was obvious: information about her wealthy clients. The gambling ring wasn't run by amateurs but by sophisticated criminals who understood leverage. They knew exactly how valuable and damaging Sheila's knowledge could be. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw a heavy-set Filipino man in a security uniform. Marco, the enforcer for her debt collectors. She opened the door with a practiced smile. "You missed our appointment," he said, stepping inside without invitation. "I was working. The Sheikh's wedding." "We don't care if it's the Sheikh or the Pope," Marco interrupted, his voice soft but menacing. "We care about payment." He walked around her apartment, touching objects with deliberate casualness. Her awards, framed photos with celebrities, the crystal vase worth 4,000 AED. "Nice life you've built here. Would be a shame to lose it all." His implication was clear. Unpaid debts meant more than financial ruin. They meant deportation, disgrace, return to the Philippines with nothing. He mentioned another Filipino event planner who had faced similar circumstances last year. How she'd been found with cocaine in her apartment, planted by the same people Sheila owed. "I'll have your money," she promised. "I just need time." After he left, Sheila sat in the dark, laptop open to underground forums discussing digital footprint removal. She found what she needed in an hour: a Pakistani tech specialist working out of Dubai Internet City who advertised reputation management services through encrypted channels. His rates started at 75,000 AED. The pieces aligned in her mind with terrible clarity. Help Nina, help herself, protect both their futures. The moral calculus made her nauseous, but desperation has its own logic. The cafe in Dara was deliberately chosen, far from the glittering skyscrapers and luxury malls where Sheila normally operated. Here, in the older part of Dubai, she was less likely to encounter clients or colleagues. Nina arrived wearing oversized sunglasses and a simple headscarf, looking nothing like the polished model from magazine covers. They sat in a corner booth, speaking in hushed Tagalog despite the cafe being nearly empty. "I've been researching options," Sheila began, her voice calm and professional as if discussing floral arrangements rather than digital erasure. "There are specialists who can perform what they call professional digital remediation. Essentially, they scrub all traces of specific content, including cached versions and archived materials." Nina leaned forward, hope flickering in her eyes. "They can make it all disappear?" "Yes, but it's expensive and requires discretion." Sheila hesitated, hating herself for what came next. "The service costs 150,000 AED. Nina's sharp intake of breath reflected the enormity of the sum. "I don't have that kind of money available. Everything I earn goes to my family or maintaining appearances for Talal." "You could pay after the wedding," Sheila suggested, the words feeling dirty in her mouth. "When you receive your mar." The traditional Islamic bridal gift from Talal would be substantial, likely several million dirhams. Relief flooded Nina's face. Yes, of course. I'd pay you immediately." Sheila produced a contract disguised as additional wedding coordination services. the language vague enough to justify the payment while specific enough to be legally binding. Nina signed without reading the details, her trust in Sheila absolute and heartbreaking. "Thank you," Nina whispered, gripping Sheila's hand across the table. "You're saving my life." The irony of those words would haunt Sheila later. The office in Dubai Internet City was legitimate on the surface, one of dozens of identical glass-fronted spaces filled with young tech workers. But Abbas operated from a backroom accessed through a loading dock, his real business conducted behind a facade of app development. "Digital ghosts," he called his team, though Sheila suspected it was just him and perhaps one or two others. His workspace was cluttered with energy drink cans and multiple monitors displaying code Sheila couldn't begin to understand. "So, wedding planner," he said, not looking up from his keyboard. "What skeleton needs burying?" Sheila explained the situation in clinical terms: content removal, link deletion, cache clearing. No names, no specific details. Abbas nodded, unimpressed. "Standard scrub job. I need platform details, approximate dates, identifying features." She provided the information Nina had given her. Dates, usernames, distinguishing marks or items that might appear in the content. Abbas's only reaction came when she mentioned the jade bracelet Nina always wore. "Unique identifiers make it harder," he said, finally looking up. "But not impossible." His confidence struck Sheila as overblown, but she was in no position to shop around. She counted out 15,000 AED in cash, the down payment he demanded. 2 weeks, he promised, pocketing the money without counting it. Digital footprint eliminated. Your client becomes a ghost. As Sheila left, the weight of her decisions pressed down on her shoulders. She had crossed a line, from facilitating dreams to facilitating deception. But the alternative was unthinkable. Financial ruin, deportation, shame. At least this way, she told herself, everyone won. Nina kept her secret. Talal got his perfect bride. The Almerka family maintained their reputation. And Sheila kept her carefully constructed life from collapsing. What she couldn't know was how spectacularly her plan would fail, or the deadly consequences that would follow. Dubai, January 2025. The Burj Khalifa observation deck had been closed to the public for the evening, transformed by Sheila's team into a glittering engagement celebration that merged Emirati tradition with contemporary luxury. 500 guests mingled 828 meters above the city. Dubai spread beneath them like a carpet of lights. The fountains below performed a choreographed dance to a specially commissioned orchestral piece that incorporated both Arabian and Filipino musical elements. Sheila's subtle nod to the union of cultures. Sheikh Talal Almerka stood beside Nina at the center of it all, his hand placed possessively at the small of her back. Nina wore a custom Elie Saab gown in pale gold that caught the light as she moved, making her appear to glow from within. The jade bracelet on her wrist provided the only splash of color against the monochrome palette Miriam had insisted upon for the event. "Smile," Sheila whispered as she passed Nina, adjusting a flower arrangement nearby. "Miriam is watching." Indeed, Talal's mother observed the proceedings with the calculating gaze of a general surveying a battlefield. Her own kaftan, encrusted with diamonds and pearls, was estimated to be worth more than most of the guests earned in a year. She nodded approvingly when Nina greeted an elderly sheikh with perfect deference, bowing just enough to show respect without subservience. Sheila's phone vibrated in the hidden pocket of her dress. A text from Abbas. "Complications with Russian servers. Need to discuss urgently." Her stomach clenched. In the 3 weeks since their meeting, Abbas had sent only terse updates claiming progress. Now, with less than 8 weeks until the wedding, complications was the last word she wanted to hear. "Is everything all right?" Nina asked, catching Sheila's expression as she passed. "Perfect," Sheila lied, the professional mask slipping back into place. "Just a minor issue with the orchid delivery for tomorrow's photo shoot." Across the room, Talal was deep in conversation with the Minister of Finance, both men speaking in rapid Arabic that excluded the primarily English-speaking guests around them. The body language was clear to Sheila's practiced eye, the slight angle of their bodies creating a private bubble, the measured tone suggesting matters more significant than social pleasantries. At precisely 10 p.m., Sheila's phone vibrated again. Another text from Abbas. Someone accessed the server. Unknown origin. Working to contain. A cold dread settled in her chest. Abbas's workspace was even more chaotic than before. Empty pizza boxes stacked beside monitors displaying lines of code that scrolled too quickly to read. The man himself looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes bloodshot, stubble darkening his usually clean-shaven face. "I don't understand tech language," Sheila said sharply. "Tell me in plain terms what's happening." Abbas ran a hand through his greasy hair. "I was removing the content, methodically, carefully, but there was a cached version on a Russian server I couldn't access directly." He pointed to one of his screens where a complicated diagram showed digital pathways. "I used a proxy to scrub it, but someone was monitoring. They downloaded everything before I could delete it." Someone was monitoring a random Russian server? Sheila's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. "Not random," Abbas admitted reluctantly. "It's known in certain circles, for certain content." The implication was clear. The server hosted questionable material, exactly the kind of digital backwater where Nina's content might have been archived without her knowledge. Abbas had taken shortcuts, used established channels rather than doing the painstaking work of tracing every digital footprint. "The face is blurred in all the content," Abbas added quickly. "Standard privacy feature of the platform." But what? "The bracelet is visible. The jade one she always wears." Sheila closed her eyes briefly. Nina's grandmother's bracelet, the one she never removed, the one she'd been photographed wearing at every public event with Talal, including the lavish engagement party just last night. A unique identifier, just as Abbas had warned. "Can you track where the content went?" she asked. Abbas shook his head. "Encrypted channels." "But," he hesitated. "There's a Telegram group. Gulf Royals Uncensored. Private, invitation only. My cousin does IT for a Saudi prince's office. He says there's been activity there today. New content being shared." The timeline crystallized in Sheila's mind with terrifying clarity. How long before someone recognized the bracelet, made the connection to Nina Alvarado, bride-to-be of Sheikh Talal Al-Merka? How long before it reached the family? In a private mansion on Palm Jumeirah, Layla Al-Faisal scrolled through her phone with practiced boredom. At 29, the daughter of a Saudi real estate magnate had been educated at Le Rosey in Switzerland and considered herself above the provincial attitudes of most Gulf elites. But she had also been briefly linked with Talal Al-Merka before he had chosen the Filipino model instead. A slight she hadn't forgotten. The notification from Gulf Royals Uncensored caught her attention immediately. New content, tagged with the standard warning about discretion. She tapped the video, watched for approximately 30 seconds, then froze the frame where a distinctive jade bracelet was clearly visible on the wrist of a woman whose face remained obscurely blurred. Well, she murmured, tapping the screen to forward the content to a second private group. This one primarily consisting of the mothers and sisters of prominent Dubai families. Her accompanying message was surgical in its precision. "Isn't this the same bracelet Talal Al-Merka's fiancé wears?" Layla smiled as she set her phone down, knowing exactly what she had done. By morning, Maryam Al-Merka would see the video. By afternoon, the engagement might well be over. In elite Dubai circles, reputation was everything, and the Al-Merkas, as relatively new money, were particularly vulnerable to scandal. The following 48 hours unfolded with the inevitable progression of a Greek tragedy. The content traveled through private channels, carefully contained within the upper echelons of Gulf society but spreading with the efficiency of a virus. A cousin of the Al-Merka family first recognized the bracelet, confirmed by comparing it to recent society photos of Nina. A discreet call was made to Khalid Al-Merka's private secretary. Sheila tracked the spread through frantic updates from Abbas, who monitored the digital chatter through his cousin's access. She tried repeatedly to reach Nina, but the young woman was in the midst of final fittings for her trousseau, surrounded by Maryam's hand-picked attendants, effectively isolated from outside contact. When Sheila's phone finally rang at 10 p.m. on the second day, it was Maryam Al-Merka herself. "My office," Tomorrow, 8 a.m. The line went dead before Sheila could respond. In the private sitting room of the Almerka family compound, Miriam Almerka sat alone, her iPad open on the antique rosewood table before her. The room was decorated in the opulent international style favored by wealthy Emiratis, French antiques, Italian marble, Persian carpets, all underlining the family's cosmopolitan tastes and global connections. On the screen, the video played in silence, the only sound in the room Miriam's measured breathing. Despite the blurred face, the jade bracelet was unmistakable. The same one she had complimented Nina on during their first meeting. Not knowing its significance went beyond family heritage. Miriam closed the video and made a single call. Khalid, come to my sitting room. Bring no one. 20 minutes later, Khalid Almerka entered, his traditional white thobe immaculate despite the late hour. At 62, he carried his substantial wealth in the confidence of his stride and the quality of his attire. The subtle embroidery on his collar cost more than most men's entire wardrobes. What couldn't wait until morning? He asked, irritation evident in his tone. Wordlessly, Miriam handed him the iPad. His expression remained controlled as he watched, only the tightening of his jaw betraying his reaction. When? He asked simply. The metadata suggests 3 years ago, before she met Talal. Miriam's voice was clinical, devoid of emotion. The face is obscured, but the bracelet is undeniable. Who has seen this? Too many. Miriam's gaze was steady. It's contained for now, but these things never stay buried. Khalid placed the iPad down with deliberate care. The engagement must end. Immediately. Without public explanation. And Talal. I will speak with him. No. Miriam's voice was firm. I will show him first. He should see what his choice has brought upon this family. The family meeting was held in Khalid's private study, a masculine space of dark wood and leather with windows overlooking the family's private marina. Talal was the last to arrive, his expression shifting from confusion to concern when he saw his parents' grave faces. What's happened? He asked, his English accent more pronounced when stressed, a remnant of his years at boarding school. Sit down, his father commanded. Miriam stepped forward, iPad in hand. Before we show you this, understand one thing. The decision has already been made. The engagement is over. How you handle it is the only question that remains. Talal's face hardened. At 33, he had spent his life deferring to his parents' wishes. The appropriate schools, the appropriate career in the family business, the appropriate social circle. Nina had been his single act of independence, albeit one his parents had reluctantly accepted after investigating her seemingly impeccable background and modeling career. When Miriam played the video, Talal's expression remained frozen, only a muscle twitching in his jaw betraying his reaction. When it ended, silence filled the room. This proves nothing, he said finally. The face is blurred. Don't be naive, his father snapped. The bracelet is hers. Everyone who matters has already seen this and made the connection. 3 years ago, Talal's voice was measured, controlled. Before she even came to Dubai. It doesn't matter when it happened, Miriam interrupted. What matters is that it exists. What matters is that every business associate, every potential investor, every member of the family will have seen your bride selling herself online. Talal flinched at the crude phrasing, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. The engagement ends today, Khalid stated flatly. We'll release a statement citing incompatibility. Nothing more. You'll be photographed at the club tomorrow, alone, showing that life continues normally. In a month or two, we'll begin introducing you to suitable alternatives. And Nina? Talal asked, his voice dangerously quiet. She'll be sent home. Generously compensated for her discretion, of course. Talal stood abruptly. I will speak with her first. Alone. His parents exchanged glances. That would be unwise, his mother began. I said I will speak with her myself, Talal repeated, his tone allowing no argument. I will end it, but I will do it with dignity. What his parents couldn't see, what Talal himself perhaps didn't fully recognize, was the cold rage building behind his carefully composed exterior. Not just rage at Nina for her deception, but at himself for his weakness, at his parents for their constant control, at the society that had shaped him into a man who cared more about appearances than his own desires. Very well, his father conceded finally. But it ends today, Talal. No negotiations. As Talal left the study, his face betrayed nothing of the storm within. His walk was measured, his shoulders straight, the perfect image of a man in control. Only in the privacy of his car did he allow his expression to change, a darkness settling over his features that would have alarmed anyone who witnessed it. He made a single phone call. Have the suite at the one and only Royal Mirage prepared. Tonight. No staff after 9 p.m. Pause. And contact Ms. Alvarado. Tell her I wish to meet her there at 10 to discuss final wedding details. The lie came easily, each word pronounced with perfect clarity. As he ended the call, Talal ran his finger over the screen of his phone, pulling up a photo of Nina laughing at their engagement party, the jade bracelet clearly visible on her slender wrist. Dubai, February 2025. The underground parking garage of the Armani Hotel echoed with the click of Sheila's heels as she hurried toward her car. Her meeting with Maryam Almerka had lasted exactly 12 minutes. Sufficient time for the older woman to inform her that the wedding was cancelled and her services no longer required. The substantial cancellation fee specified in her contract would be paid. Maryam had stated coldly, provided absolute discretion was maintained regarding the circumstances. Sheila had nodded, professional mask firmly in place despite the internal panic. The cancellation fee would cover perhaps half her gambling debts. Not enough. Never enough. Her phone vibrated with an incoming call. Nina. The fifth in the past hour. Sheila hesitated before answering. Where are you? Nina's voice was frantic, barely above a whisper. My car. Where are you? Sheila responded, glancing around to ensure she was alone. The service entrance at Dubai Mall. Please, I need to see you. They took my phone for hours. Maryam was there when I got back to the apartment. She just looked at me and said, pack your things. Nothing else. 20 minutes later, Sheila's silver Mercedes pulled into the lowest level of the mall's parking structure. Nina was waiting in the shadows, a baseball cap pulled low over her face, sunglasses despite the dimness. She slid into the passenger seat, trembling visibly. They know, she said simply. Somehow they know. Sheila kept her expression neutral, guilt churning beneath her composed exterior. What exactly did they say? Nothing specific. Maryam just looked at me like I was contaminated. Then the staff started packing my things. When I tried to call Talal, they said he was unavailable. His mother just kept repeating that arrangements would be made for my discreet departure. Nina's fingers twisted her jade bracelet frantically, the same bracelet that had betrayed her. A boss failed, Sheila thought bitterly. The digital scrubbing that was supposed to protect them both had instead accelerated the disaster. Talal texted me, Nina continued, pulling out a second phone. A basic model, not her usual iPhone. He wants to meet tonight, at the one and only, to discuss things privately. Hope flickered in her eyes. Maybe he's fighting for me. Maybe he doesn't care about what I did. The naive optimism in Nina's voice made Sheila's chest ache with a complicated mixture of pity and self-loathing. Nina, she began carefully, men like Talal. Their pride is everything. You need to be prepared for. He loves me, Nina interrupted fiercely. You don't understand what we have, what we've shared. He'll listen when I explain. He'll understand I had no choice. Sheila thought of the Almerka's cold efficiency in the cancellation meeting, how Maryam had referred to Nina not by name but as the situation. She thought of other scandals she had witnessed in her years navigating Dubai high society, how quickly people disappeared, how complete the erasure. Don't go alone, she said finally. Let me come with you, or at least stay nearby. Nina shook her head. He specifically said alone. This is between us. She checked her watch, a Cartier gifted by Talal on their engagement. I should go. I need to prepare to look my best for him. As Nina reached for the door handle, Sheila caught her arm. "Nina, listen to me. If anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Promise me." Nina's smile was heartbreakingly confident. "Nothing will be wrong. By tomorrow, this will all be resolved. You'll see." As Sheila watched Nina walk away, a sense of dread settled over her that no amount of professional compartmentalization could dispel. Meanwhile, in his private penthouse overlooking the Arabian Gulf, Talal Almerka sat at his desk, methodically writing in a leather-bound journal. The room was immaculate. Everything in its place, not a single object misaligned. Classical Arabic music played softly in the background, a composition his father had always favored for its mathematical precision. "Humiliation," he wrote in elegant Arabic script, "is more painful than death." The journal was his single outlet, the only space where he permitted himself the luxury of unfiltered emotion. 15 years at British boarding schools had taught him the art of the impassive exterior, the perfect manners, the appropriate small talk, the ability to smile while seething inside. Only here, in these private pages, did he allow himself to acknowledge the rage that simmered beneath his carefully constructed persona. His phone rang, his father. Talal composed his face before answering, though the call was audio only. "Habit." "It's done," Talal said without preamble. "I'm meeting her tonight to end it formally." "Good," Khalid replied. "Your mother has arranged for the girl to be on a flight to Manila tomorrow morning. First class, naturally. We are not uncivilized." The condescension in his father's tone registered like a physical blow. Always the implication that without parental guidance, Talal would somehow fail to uphold the family's standards of behavior. "I'll handle it my way," Talal said, his voice neutral. "Just ensure it's handled. The Jassim family has expressed interest in reintroducing you to their daughter Amara. Oxford-educated, proper family. No surprises in her background." After ending the call, Talal returned to his journal, writing rapidly now, the elegant script growing jagged with suppressed emotion. The words betrayal, deception, and shame appeared repeatedly, underlined with such force that the pen tore through the paper in places. When he had exhausted his immediate fury, Talal closed the journal and moved to his laptop. With methodical precision, he began researching Nina Alvarado's background more thoroughly than the initial family investigation had done. Social media accounts, modeling agency profiles, family connections in the Philippines. He found her siblings' Facebook pages: Carlo, the oldest brother who managed a small electronics shop in Iloilo; Mark and Leah, still in school, their tuition paid by Nina's modeling work. He found their modest family home on Google Street View, noted the corrugated metal roof and unfinished concrete walls. He found obituaries for Nina's father, medical fundraising pages that had failed to reach even half their goals. The evidence of Nina's desperation, the legitimate need that had driven her decisions, did nothing to soften his resolve. If anything, it hardened his determination. Her poverty made her actions understandable but no less unforgivable. She had brought her weakness into his world, made him vulnerable through his feelings for her. At precisely 8 p.m., Talal called the manager of the one and only Royal Mirage personally. "The Palm Beach suite requires specific preparations," he instructed. "Champagne, Dom Perignon, 2008. Roses white, not red. And privacy. No staff after my arrival." The manager assured him all would be arranged exactly as requested. No staff would disturb them. The suite's private entrance would be accessible only with the electronic key Talal already possessed. Next, Talal opened his safe and removed a small velvet box containing Nina's engagement ring, a 7-carat emerald-cut diamond that had cost 1.2 million AED. He placed it carefully in his jacket pocket. The return of the ring would symbolize the formal end of their relationship, a necessary ritual of closure. Finally, he picked up his phone and, after a moment's hesitation, composed a message to Nina. "We need to speak privately. One and only Royal Mirage, Palm Beach Suite, 10 p.m. Use the private entrance. Come alone." His thumb hovered over the send button for several seconds before pressing it. The message disappeared into the digital ether, setting in motion events that could not be undone. At 9:30 p.m., Talal arrived at the suite, dismissing the staff after a cursory inspection. The space was exactly as he had specified. Roses arranged in crystal vases, champagne chilling in a silver bucket, lights dimmed to a warm glow that softened the opulent Arabian decor. The suite overlooked the illuminated gardens and private beach beyond, the gentle sound of waves audible through the terrace doors. He placed the engagement ring box prominently on the coffee table, angled precisely for maximum impact when Nina entered. From his briefcase, he removed his laptop and opened it, ensuring the video was cued and ready. She would see what he had seen, understand exactly why this ending was necessary. As Talal moved through the suite, checking each detail with obsessive precision, his phone buzzed with messages from family members. His mother confirming travel arrangements for Nina's departure, his father reminding him of a business meeting the following morning, his sister offering sympathy for the unfortunate situation. He read each message with growing detachment, feeling himself split into two distinct entities, the dutiful son responding appropriately to family concerns, and the wounded man planning a confrontation that existed beyond the realm of his usual controlled existence. At 9:55 p.m., Talal positioned himself by the window overlooking the Arabian Gulf, back straight, hands clasped behind him, the posture of a man in command of himself and his surroundings. When the electronic lock of the private entrance beeped at precisely 10:02 p.m., he did not turn immediately. Nina entered hesitantly, her footsteps soft on the marble floor. She had dressed carefully. A modest but elegant white dress, minimal jewelry except for the jade bracelet. Her hair loose around her shoulders the way Talal had once said he preferred it. "Talal," she said softly, her voice catching. "Thank you for meeting me, for giving me a chance to explain." Still he didn't turn, maintaining the power dynamic with deliberate cruelty. "What is there to explain, Nina?" His voice was measured, eerily calm. "That you lied to me? To my family? That you concealed your past while accepting my ring, my name, my reputation?" Nina moved further into the room, stopping when she saw the engagement ring box positioned on the table. "I never lied," she said, voice strengthening slightly. "I never told you because it wasn't relevant to us, to who I am now." Talal turned then, his expression carefully neutral. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the sofa. "Would you like champagne? A final toast to what might have been." The deliberate politeness was more terrifying than anger would have been. Nina remained standing, instinct warning her against accepting anything from him in this mood. "I did what I had to do for my family," she said, chin lifting slightly. "After my father died, there were medical bills, school fees. My brothers and sister would have had to drop out. My grandmother needed kidney treatments. The modeling work wasn't enough at first." "So noble," Talal said, the first hint of contempt bleeding into his tone. "The sacrificial daughter. And did your noble intentions include planning to marry into my family while this content remained accessible to anyone with the right connections?" He moved to his laptop, opening it with deliberate slowness. "Would you like to see what my mother showed me this morning? What every business associate, every family friend, every rival of the Almerkas has already seen?" Nina paled. "Talal, please. I deleted everything years ago, before I even came to Dubai, before I met you. Nothing is ever deleted, Nina. That's the first lesson of modern life." He turned the laptop toward her, pressed play. The video began, grainy but clear enough. A woman in lingerie, face blurred but body unmistakably Nina's, the jade bracelet clearly visible as she moved. Nina stared, transfixed by horror, watching her past self perform for invisible viewers. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop it." Talal closed the laptop with a sharp click that echoed in the silent room. "Do you understand what you've done? Not just to me, but to my family? The Almerka name took 3 generations to build. 3 generations of careful alliances, strategic investments, impeccable reputation management. And you!" His voice finally broke, revealing the raw wound beneath the controlled exterior. "You made me a fool in front of my blood." Nina moved toward him, hand outstretched. "Talal, I love you. This was before you. Before us. I was surviving the only way I could. He stepped back from her touch as if burned. Love, he repeated, the word bitter in his mouth. What does love matter against honor? Against family? It should matter more, Nina insisted, desperation giving her courage. Your father humiliates your mother with his affairs. Everyone knows. Is that honor? The way your cousins talk about their Filipino housemaids when they think no one is listening. Is that honor? You're better than them, Talal. You always have been. Her words struck with precision, targeting vulnerabilities she had learned during their months together. Talal's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping visibly beneath his skin. You know nothing about my family, he said, voice dangerously soft. Nothing about honor or loyalty. I know you, Nina countered, taking another step toward him. The real you, not the perfect son or the respectable businessman. The man who reads poetry and cries at sad films and wants children who will be raised with kindness instead of obligation. That's the man I love. That's the man I want to marry. For a heartbeat, something flickered in Talal's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or the faintest echo of the love he had professed for months. Nina saw it and pressed her advantage, moving closer still. We can leave Dubai, she suggested, voice urgent. Start over somewhere else. London, New York. Places where no one cares about these things. We have money. We have each other. Talal stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. A calculation, a decision forming. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, softened to the tone he had used in their most intimate moments. Perhaps you're right, he said, reaching for the champagne. Perhaps we should discuss options. Alternatives. Hope bloomed in Nina's expression as Talal poured 2 glasses, handed one to her. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass in toast. Nina smiled, relief visible in every line of her body as she raised her glass to his. Neither of them drank immediately, their eyes locked in a moment suspended between past and future, between the life they had planned and whatever might come next. What Nina couldn't see was Talal's other hand, slowly moving toward the white silk sash that lay draped across the back of a nearby chair, the sample wedding veil tie that Sheila had personally selected during a fitting months earlier, now repurposed for a function far removed from its intended use. Dubai, February 14, 2025, Valentine's Day. The irony of the date wasn't lost on Talal as he carefully placed the champagne flute on the marble side table, his movements deliberate and controlled. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the one and only Royal Mirage suite, the Arabian Gulf stretched dark and bottomless beneath a moonless sky. Inside, the warm lighting cast soft shadows across Nina's face as she searched his expression for reassurance. You really think we could start over somewhere else? Nina asked, hope making her voice tremble slightly. She was still standing, champagne untouched, the jade bracelet catching the light as she gestured. Leave all this behind? Talal moved toward her with the careful precision that had always characterized his actions, the same measured pace he used in board meetings, at social functions, in every aspect of his meticulously controlled life. His face revealed nothing of the storm raging beneath. Tell me everything, he said softly. I want to understand why you did it. Every detail. Relief flooded Nina's features, the chance to explain, to be heard, to reclaim her narrative. Words tumbled out in a desperate cascade. Her father's sudden heart attack, the medical bills that had drained the family's modest savings, her brother's facing expulsion from school, her grandmother's kidney failure requiring twice-weekly dialysis they couldn't afford. The modeling jobs weren't enough at first, she explained, setting down her champagne to illustrate with her hands. I was new, unknown. The OnlyFans account was supposed to be temporary, just until I established myself, just until Carlo found better work. And did no one from your hometown discover it? Talal asked, his voice clinically detached as he circled behind her. I used a different name, blurred my face, was careful about identifying marks. Her fingers unconsciously touched the jade bracelet, the single mistake in her careful anonymity. As soon as I signed with the international agency, I deleted everything. Paid a service to remove all traces. She laughed bitterly. Or so I thought. Talal was behind her now, silently lifting the white silk sash from the chair where it had been draped. 6 feet of pure silk, carefully chosen to complement the wedding dress Nina would now never wear. And this, he said, voice hardening, this deception, you thought it would remain buried forever? That my family, my name, would never be touched by your shame? Nina turned to face him, realizing too late that something had shifted. The artificial warmth had vanished from his eyes, replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. Talal, please. I was surviving. I did what I had to do for my family. She reached for him, fingers brushing his tailored sleeve. You would have done the same. His laugh was sharp, brittle. That's where you're wrong, Nina. I would have died before dishonoring my family name, before making my father look a fool among his peers. Nina took a step back, survival instinct finally overriding hope. I should go, she said quietly. We're both too emotional right now. We can talk tomorrow when… There is no tomorrow, Talal interrupted, the silk sash now stretched between his hands. Not for us. Not after this. Nina glanced toward the door, calculating distance and chances. I'll leave Dubai. Tonight. You'll never have to see me again. Your family can say whatever they want about why the engagement ended. It's too late for that, Talal said, moving with sudden purpose. The video has been seen. The whispers have started. As long as you exist, the shame exists. Understanding crashed over Nina like a physical blow. She lunged for the door, but Talal moved faster, catching her arm with bruising force. For all his refined manners and expensive education, he was still a man raised in a culture where honor superseded all else, where family reputation was worth more than individual life. You made me a fool in front of my blood, he said, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The words seemed to unlock something primal in him, something that had perhaps always lurked beneath the veneer of civilization. Nina fought with unexpected strength, desperation lending her power. A lamp crashed to the floor. Her nails raked his face, drawing blood. She opened her mouth to scream, but his hand clamped over it with ruthless efficiency. I loved you, he hissed, wrestling her backward. I defied my family for you. I believed in you. In the ensuing struggle, Nina's jade bracelet, the heirloom that had betrayed her, snapped, beads scattering across the marble floor like tears. The loss seemed to drain her final reserves of strength. In that moment of distraction, Talal looped the silk sash around her throat. It was over in minutes that stretched like hours. As Nina's struggles weakened, Talal's expression remained oddly detached, as if he were observing someone else's actions from a great distance. When it was done, when stillness replaced struggle and silence filled the luxurious suite, he carefully lowered her body to the plush carpet, arranging her limbs with the same precision he applied to everything in his life. For several moments, he simply stood over her, breathing heavily, blood from the scratches on his cheek dripping onto his white shirt collar. Then, like a machine re-engaging after a momentary malfunction, he moved with renewed purpose. From his briefcase, Talal removed several sheets of hotel stationery and a collection of documents bearing Nina's signature. Modeling contracts, their prenuptial agreement, visa applications. With methodical care, he began practicing her handwriting, copying the distinctive curve of her Y's and the way she dotted her I's with tiny circles. An hour later, a suicide note lay beside an arrangement of prescription sleeping pills on the nightstand. Pills prescribed to Talal himself for occasional insomnia, now part of his carefully constructed narrative. The note expressed Nina's shame at her past being discovered, her inability to face the humiliation, her apologies to Talal and her family. The bathroom became the final scene of his production. He filled the marble tub with warm water, carefully carried Nina's body inside, fully clothed in the white dress she had chosen with such hope. He arranged her face in peaceful repose, closed her eyes, smoothed her hair. With surgical gloves borrowed from the hotel's first aid kit, he placed the empty pill bottle beside the tub, scattered a few dissolved tablets in the water. Before leaving, Talal made a single call. Not to the police, not to hotel security, but to his family's attorney. "It's done," he said simply. "Room 412, one and only. She took her own life. Suicide note explains everything. I've left for the airport. I'm taking the private jet to London tonight. Business emergency." The attorney asked no questions. In 15 years of service to the Almerca family, he had learned that certain matters were best handled with minimal inquiry. "I'll take care of it," he assured Talal. "Your father will be informed. The appropriate authorities will be notified by morning. Discretion is guaranteed." Talal surveyed the room one final time, ensuring every detail supported his narrative. The broken bracelet beads were pocketed, the signs of struggle erased, the champagne glasses wiped clean of fingerprints. As he stepped out onto the private terrace for a final look at the Arabian Gulf, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Is it resolved?" His reply was equally terse. "It's over. I'll be in London for a week. Tell father to issue the statement we discussed. Mutual separation, respectful distance. My focus returning to family business." At precisely 3:17 a.m., Talal Almerca exited through the suite's private entrance, digital key card wiping all electronic evidence of his departure time. By sunrise, he would be in London, establishing his alibi with breakfast meetings and public appearances. While in Dubai, a carefully orchestrated discovery would begin. The housekeeper assigned to the Palm Beach suite knocked precisely at 11 a.m., the standard checkout time. When no response came, she used her master key, calling out the customary housekeeping as she entered. The suite appeared undisturbed at first glance. The bed unslept in, champagne glasses on the table, white roses still fresh in their vases. It was only when she approached the partially open bathroom door that the carefully constructed scene revealed itself. Her screams brought hotel security running. The manager, recognizing immediately the potential scandal involving high-profile guests, ordered the room sealed and placed a call not to local police, but to a private number provided for special situations involving elite clientele. Within 30 minutes, 2 plainclothes officers arrived, bypassing the hotel's main entrance. They were not regular police but members of a specialized unit that handled sensitive matters involving prominent families. Their examination of the scene was cursory, their questions minimal. The suicide note was bagged without fingerprinting. Photographs were taken from prescribed angles that emphasized the pill bottle while minimizing signs that might contradict the suicide narrative. The hotel doctor, summoned to officially pronounce death, raised a single eyebrow at the lack of typical posthumous lividity patterns but signed the death certificate without comment. Cause of death: apparent suicide by prescription medication overdose. No autopsy recommended. By afternoon, Nina Alvarado's body had been removed through the service entrance, transported not to the public morgue but to a private medical facility owned by a business associate of Khalid Almerca. Hotel staff were debriefed, confidentiality agreements reinforced with generous bonuses, security footage from relevant hallways archived to a private server rather than standard police evidence. The police captain who oversaw the case personally received a call from an aide to a senior government minister while sitting in his office that evening. "The Almerca family has suffered enough embarrassment," the aide said without preamble. "A quick resolution would be appreciated. Suicide is established. No need for further investigation." The captain understood perfectly. By nightfall, the case was marked closed, the paperwork processed with remarkable efficiency, the public record reduced to a single line. Foreign national, female, 26, found deceased, self-inflicted. No press release, no media notification. In a city built on image and discretion, the death of a Filipino model in a luxury hotel was hardly worth disrupting the careful narrative of prosperity and security that Dubai presented to the world. Dubai, February 2025. The interrogation room in Al Barsha police station was deliberately austere. White walls, fluorescent lighting that buzzed intermittently, a metal table bolted to the floor. Sheila Bautista sat with perfect posture despite having been there for 7 hours, her navy blazer showing wrinkles for perhaps the first time in her professional life. Across from her sat 2 officers, one Emirati in uniform, one Filipino in plain clothes. The latter's presence was supposedly for translation purposes, but Sheila recognized the tactic. A countryman to establish false rapport, to remind her of her precarious position as a guest worker in a foreign land. "Let's go through it again," the Filipino officer said in Tagalog, his accent placing him from Manila's northern suburbs. "Your relationship with Ms. Alvarado was purely professional? As I've stated 6 times now, I was hired to plan her wedding to Sheikh Talal Almerka," Sheila replied in English, maintaining the linguistic upper hand. "When the engagement ended, so did my professional services." The Emirati officer slid a folder across the metal table. Inside were printouts, bank statements showing transfers from Sheila's account to Abbas, text messages between Sheila and Nina discussing digital services, immigration records highlighting Sheila's expired residency permit, pending renewal. "You arranged something called digital remediation for Ms. Alvarado," the officer stated flatly. "You facilitated the concealment of information from Sheikh Talal and his family. Information that, had it been known earlier, would have prevented a painful public embarrassment to a prominent Emirati family." Sheila's legal training from her years managing contracts allowed her to recognize the careful construction of the accusation. Not directly linking her to Nina's death, officially ruled suicide, but establishing her as an accessory to deception, creating a narrative that required a scapegoat without explicitly stating the crime. "I advised Ms. Alvarado on reputation management," Sheila said carefully, "a standard service for public figures preparing for high-profile unions." The Filipino officer leaned forward. "And your gambling debts? Also standard service." Ice flooded Sheila's veins. They knew everything: the offshore accounts, the underground betting rings, the threats from collection agents. Her carefully compartmentalized worlds had collapsed into one another. "We found interesting messages on your phone," he continued, tapping another file. "Threats, payment deadlines, desperate measures for desperate times, yes? A woman with everything to lose." The implication hung in the air between them, that Sheila's financial desperation had led to Nina's death, that she had somehow betrayed the young woman for profit. The truth, that Sheila had genuinely tried to help, that her scheme had backfired tragically, seemed impossible to articulate in this sterile room designed to extract confessions rather than nuance. "I never harmed Nina," Sheila stated, meeting the officer's gaze directly. "I was trying to protect her. By concealing her past? By facilitating deception against her fiancé's family." The Emirati officer's tone remained neutral, but his eyes were cold. "In the UAE, moral decency is not merely a personal choice but a legal obligation. What you arranged constitutes moral corruption under federal law." Hours passed in circular questioning. No lawyer was offered or mentioned. Outside, Dubai continued its relentless rhythm of commerce and luxury, oblivious to the human machinery of consequence grinding away in rooms like this throughout the city. Finally, near midnight, a document was placed before her. A confession written in both Arabic and English, admitting to aiding moral deception, facilitating immigration fraud, and undermining public decency. The penalties listed included deportation, a lifetime ban from the UAE, and potential criminal charges in the Philippines. "Sign and you leave tomorrow," the Filipino officer said, voice softening for the first time. "Refuse and we investigate further. Your gambling associates have many interesting things to say about you. Some suggest money laundering. Others imply connections to activities no respectable wedding planner would want examined." Sheila stared at the document, understanding with perfect clarity that she was being offered a poisoned mercy. Take responsibility for peripheral crimes. Leave quietly. Never speak of what really happened to Nina Alvarado. The alternative was to become another disappeared expatriate, lost in a legal system designed to protect Emirati interests at all costs. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed her name. 15 years of carefully constructed identity in Dubai reduced to a scrawled signature on a confession she hadn't written. The Philippine Overseas Labor Office Processing Center operated with bureaucratic efficiency that masked institutional indifference. Rows of plastic chairs filled with Filipino workers, housemaids accused of theft, construction workers injured on sites without proper documentation, nurses whose contracts had been unilaterally terminated. all waiting for processing, for stamped forms that would send them home in disgrace. Sheila sat apart, still wearing the navy blazer she'd been arrested in 3 days earlier, now wrinkled beyond recognition. Her possessions had been reduced to a single plastic bag containing her passport, phone, wiped of all data, and personal identification. Everything else, her apartment contents, bank accounts, client records, had been held for investigation. A board clerk called her name, mispronouncing it despite their shared nationality. Bautista, Sheila M. Case number 47291B. Deportation processing. The procedure was humiliatingly efficient. Fingerprints taken again, cancellation stamps applied to residency permits, a perfunctory medical examination to ensure she carried no communicable diseases back to the Philippines. No one asked about her circumstances. No one offered legal counsel. The machinery of expatriate disposal ground forward with practiced indifference. "You're on the 11:40 p.m. flight to Manila," the clerk informed her, sliding a one-way ticket across the counter. "Government-paid repatriation. You cannot return to the UAE for a minimum of 10 years. Violation of this ban will result in imprisonment." Sheila stared at the ticket, economy class, middle seat, the final indignity for a woman who had once arranged private jets for her clients. "Can I make a call?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. The clerk shook her head. "Processing complete. Proceed to holding Area B for transport to airport." That night, as her flight lifted off from Dubai International Airport, Sheila pressed her forehead against the window, watching the city's famous skyline recede into the distance. 15 years of her life disappeared beneath clouds illuminated by the aircraft's wing lights. Somewhere below was the Burj Khalifa where she had orchestrated society weddings, the Dubai Marina where her office had overlooked the yacht harbor, the luxury hotels where she had transformed ballrooms into fairy tale settings. Somewhere too was Nina's body, its fate unknown to Sheila. The official story of suicide accepted without question because the alternative was unthinkable in a city built on carefully maintained illusions of perfection. As the plane leveled at cruising altitude, Sheila closed her eyes, Nina's face appearing unbidden in her memory, hopeful, trusting, doomed from the moment she had caught the attention of a man whose family valued reputation above all else. In Iloilo City, Philippines, the Alvarado family home stood unchanged by tragedy. The same corrugated metal roof, the same unfinished concrete walls, the same clotheslines stretched between posts in the small yard. Inside, Carlo Alvarado, Nina's older brother, sat at a weathered table surrounded by his younger siblings and elderly grandmother, all staring at the sealed box that had arrived that morning. The package had been delivered by a courier service that required multiple signatures and photograph documentation of receipt. Inside was Nina's passport, her Cartier watch, the diamond earrings Talal had given her for her birthday, and a single photograph from their engagement shoot. Nina smiling, Talal's hand possessively on her waist, the Dubai skyline glittering behind them. No personal note, no explanation, no death certificate, just an official letter on UAE government letterhead stating, "The mortal remains of Nina Maria Alvarado are not repatriable due to public health regulations. Cremation has been conducted according to standard procedures for non-Muslim foreign nationals." "This is wrong," Carlo said, voice shaking with grief and rage. "Nina would never kill herself. Never. She was supporting all of us. She had plans." His grandmother clutched a rosary, murmuring prayers in Hiligaynon dialect, tears streaming down her weathered face. The younger siblings, Mark and Leah, whose education Nina had prioritized above her own safety, sat in shocked silence, unable to reconcile the official story with the sister they had spoken to just days earlier, full of hopes and plans despite her engagement ending. "The embassy said there's nothing they can do," Carlo continued, pacing the small room. "The case is closed. The death certificate says suicide. No autopsy was performed because the cause was evident. How is that possible? How can a foreign country just decide our sister killed herself and we have no right to question it?" The answer, unspoken but understood by every Filipino with relatives working abroad, was painfully simple. Because Nina was disposable, her value measured differently than those she had served, her rights secondary to the reputations of powerful men in countries where guest workers remained guests regardless of their contributions. The family would later learn that Nina's body had never been cremated but buried in an unmarked grave in a remote cemetery outside Dubai, a fact discovered only through a sympathetic Filipino nurse who had been present when the body arrived at the private medical facility. By then, legal avenues for exhumation and investigation would be firmly closed, diplomatic inquiries gently but firmly redirected to more productive concerns. Meanwhile, at the one and only Royal Mirage, the Palm Beach suite had undergone a complete renovation. New furniture, new fixtures, new artwork on the walls. No physical trace remained of what had transpired there just 3 weeks earlier. In the staff scheduling office, a new directive had been issued. The suite was to be referred to by its numerical designation only, no longer by its romantic name that had appeared in previous marketing materials. Sheila's former assistant, Maritz, had been promoted to event coordinator, handling the arrangements for an Emirati-Kuwaiti wedding scheduled for the following weekend. As she supervised the placement of floral arrangements in the hotel's grand ballroom, her phone buzzed with a news alert from Gulf Business Daily. Almerca Holdings announces major expansion into European markets. Sheikh Talal to head London office. The accompanying photograph showed Talal in an immaculate suit, expression serious but confident, no trace of recent trauma visible on his composed features. The article mentioned in passing that the young executive had recently ended his engagement by mutual agreement and was focusing on family business interests. Maritz closed the alert without reading further. She had signed multiple non-disclosure agreements since Nina's death and Sheila's sudden departure, her continued employment, and the vital remittances she sent home to her own family in Mindanao depended on absolute silence regarding matters the hotel management had deemed resolved. In the staff break room, she overheard 2 Filipina housekeepers whispering about the cursed suite, about the model who had died there. Maritz cleared her throat loudly, and the women fell silent, recognizing the warning. Some stories were not meant to be told in Dubai, where prosperity depended on collective agreement, about which truths deserved acknowledgement, and which required burial beneath the desert's shifting sands. 1 year later, the cycle continued unbroken. A young Filipina model named Jasmine arrived at Dubai International Airport, her portfolio filled with promising test shots, her Instagram account cultivated to attract the right kind of attention. She moved through immigration with wide-eyed wonder, following her new agent toward a waiting car. "You're very lucky," the agent told her as they drove toward the glittering skyline. "Sheikh Farid Al-Noways himself requested you specifically for his charity fashion show. Very exclusive, very prestigious." Jasmine nodded, fingering the jade pendant her mother had given her for luck, unaware of its eerie parallel to another piece of jewelry that had spelled doom for a countrywoman she had never heard of, whose name had been carefully erased from Dubai's collective memory. At a private table in the Armani Hotel's exclusive restaurant, Farid Al-Noways studied the new model's photograph on his phone, his expression thoughtful as he considered the possibilities she represented. Across from him sat his cousin Talal, recently returned from London, more subdued than in his younger days but still impeccably groomed, still respected in the highest circles of Emirati society. "She reminds me of someone," Farid remarked casually, showing Talal the photo. Talal glanced at the image, his expression remaining perfectly neutral as he took a measured sip of non-alcoholic champagne. "All these foreign models look similar after a while," he replied, changing the subject to a pending business acquisition. In his private safe at home, locked in a velvet box that would never be opened again, lay a jade bracelet broken and rest-wrung, the only physical evidence that Nina Alvarado had ever entered his life. Some ghosts, Talal had learned, could be contained through sufficient wealth and influence. Others required more permanent solutions. And Dubai, city of miracles and reinvention, continued its relentless growth toward the sky, each new tower casting longer shadows over the secrets buried in its foundations.